Good evening. My name is Robin Geiger, and I'm with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And I want to welcome you to this community meeting on the Fairfax County Department of Transportation's Transit Strategic Plan. Tonight, our transit planning team will present an update on the plan, and when they conclude their presentation, we'll begin the question and answer portion of the meeting. And this meeting will be recorded and posted on the Transit Strategic Plan webpage, and we'll give you that address toward the end of the meeting. We also encourage you to submit your comments after the meeting using the online survey, an online feedback form, written feedback, or a phone call, and we'll let you know the various ways to provide comments, how to do that at the end of the presentation. So I think with that, we're ready to begin our presentation, and I will turn it over to Mike Felchow, our Transit Planning Chief.
Well, thank you very much, Robin, and I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and spending some time with us. It's very important to us. What we want to try to get done today is we want to get information from you on how to prioritize future services, the transit services over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's what we're going to be focusing on. We're going to be talking about what service improvements that we're thinking about doing based on all the information that we've received over the last few years. And then we want to guide you to possibly our website or provide input to us directly. So what we have is a team here tonight that's going to go over this information. First, I have Kyle Davis. He's going to go over the presentation, the bulk of the presentation, which will go over the summary of the process, the planning process that we've conducted to date. And then Ed Reed, he will go over the Reston Herndon service improvements. And then we have Haejun Kang, which will go over the mid-county area along the I-66 corridor, Chantilly, Centerville, Vienna, Tysons. And then Stuart Boggs will do the southern portion of the county. And that's our panelists tonight. And we will I will either answer the questions, or I will hand it off to one of the team members who will try to answer any questions that you may have. Once again, this is focusing on the prioritization of future services. And at this point, I would like to hand it over to Kyle Davis, who will lead us through the first part of the presentation. Go ahead, Kyle.
Good evening, everyone. Like Michael said, my name is Kyle Davis, and I'm a transportation planner here at Fairfax County Department of Transportation, and I will be beginning our presentation. So tonight, we're going to discuss the Fairfax County Transit Strategic Plan Update, or TSP. Okay, so first, so this is an agenda that's essentially going to, this shows what we're going to cover tonight. First, we'll provide a background on the TSP. Then we'll discuss the input that we've received from the public in previous public outreach. Then we'll discuss the proposed service plans that have been developed. Then we'll discuss next steps. And then there'll be a question and answer or Q&A session. So Fairfax Connector Transit Services, it covers 100 different routes across the county. We have a fleet size of 344 buses with 3 different bus garages spread out across the northern, central, and southern portion of the county, in Herndon, off of West Docks Road, and then also in Huntington. The 10-year Transit Strategic Plan, or TSP. So our TSP is a 10-year plan that's updated every 5 years. And we start with gathering input and analyzing data. From that, we formulate plans, and then the final phase of the plan would be implementation, which simply means when we're able to actually execute the plan, when we're able to actually get the wheels on the ground and actually provide the service that we planned for. So this is everything that goes in, or these are the components of the planning process, or the input that goes into the planning process. So you've got market surveys, you've got onboard surveys, which is, surveys that we conduct on board the actual bus when people are riding it. We've got bus service reviews. We've got input from stakeholders. Stakeholders could be anyone from local business owners and leaders. It could be elected officials. And then we also have public meetings, such as this one. So recommendations from the bus service reviews, as you see on the right, these come from the several different plans that cover the different areas of Fairfax County: Reston, Herndon, Franconia, Springfield, Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna, Tysons, and then the Richmond Highway Bus Rapid Transit Feeder Bus Plan. So this is an overview of the TSP process. Step one has already been, we've already conducted that, which is to the system overview and the strategic vision, the public outreach, which was conducted over the winter of 2020 and 2021, and also a system performance and operations analysis, which is to simply say a checkup. It's an assessment of the health of our system and where we can make improvements, where we have opportunities for improvement and growth. Step two, which is where we are now, is when we actually plan improvements and modifications and garner public outreach to help us prioritize which of those plans and plans for service improvements should be implemented, and in which order, what should be prioritized, essentially. That is the whole purpose of what we're trying to do here tonight, is having the public help us prioritize which of the various plans for service improvements, which should get the highest priority. The next step would be step three, which is where we develop a financial plan, which simply put is how we pay for these improvements, the implementation plan, the plan for how we're actually going to execute, and then meetings with board members, the board being the County Board of Supervisors. The next step is, after that, step four, is the TSP board approval. We anticipate that would happen around mid-fiscal year 2023, which in layperson's terms would be early calendar year 2023. So January, February, March, somewhere in that time frame. And then we would submit the TSP to the state around the end of fiscal year 2023. So now you're talking about May, June, late spring, early summer of 2023. And then step five would be the actual implementation. This covers our countywide outreach. So this actually is in reverse chronological order, where the first survey that was conducted is at the bottom. It's the market survey, which was in the fall of 2018. We got 2,600 responses. We gathered data on residents and why they do. We gathered data on why residents do not ride buses, and we use this to help determine what could be done to attract those who currently do not use our service, and to reconnect with those who are lapsed. In other words, people who may have used our service, but for some reason stopped using it. The next survey was conducted over the spring and summer of 2019, which was an onboard survey. As the name implies, it was conducted on board our buses. 3,700 responses. We gathered data on passengers' origins and destinations, which we call OD data. It simply means, where people are coming from, where they're going. And we also gather data on demographic characteristics, and we use this to help plan for increases in ridership and overall improvements in the customer's experience. Finally, we have round one of the TSP survey, which was in the winter of 2020 and 2021. We gathered 2,900 responses from this survey. We collected preferences of frequent, occasional, and non-riders. We gathered information on what people prioritize, where our opportunities for improvement are, and we use this to help solidify our goals and our vision for Fairfax Connector bus service. So we have three different area service plans, or sub-area plans, as we sometimes refer to them. Reston, Herndon, Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna, Tysons, or CCVT for short, Franconia, Springfield. As you can see, we gathered over 3,500 comments total. The outreach is what we gathered input from you all that fed into each of the 3 area service plans. And ultimately, those 3 plans form the TSP, or Transit Strategic Plan. Here's what we heard from you all. You need increased and better frequency. You need more buses showing up more often. You need greater span of service, particularly during the midday and the weekends. That's where we have a gap, the biggest gap between what we are providing now and where our demand is. People really want us to provide more service during those off-peak, as we call it in the transit world, hours. During the middle of the day, on the weekends, early in the morning, late at night. Faster travel times, connectivity. We need better connectivity to our key transfer hubs, but also to our key activity centers. And finally, you told us that you needed information, accurate, reliable, more user-friendly information about our service. Prioritizing service changes. So these are the things that will be, these are the factors that will be used to help us prioritize which service improvements get implemented when. So of course, in addition to the public input, we have these factors: readiness, how quickly and can we feasibly get the service improvement actually out on the street? How quickly can we how quickly and easily can we actually implement something? Equity emphasis areas. We absolutely prioritize equity, meaning that we will we are committing ourselves to prioritizing low income and minority populations. Service gap analysis. We want to make sure that we're providing service to the areas that have a gap between demand and what we are currently supplying. Hours of service. We want to make sure that we're providing service during the times of day when, again, there is a gap between what we are providing currently and where there is demand. So like I said before, you know, there may be demand for midday service or service on the weekends that may currently not exist, or we're underserving during those hours. And so we want to prioritize service improvements based on that. We want to prioritize service improvements based on frequency. If, you know, we see that there's a demand for more frequent service. And finally, we want to prioritize population. In other words, we want to provide service to where people live, work, and play. Proposed service plans for TSP. So the TSP is a single plan. However, it does have 2 components to it. You have the near-term plan and the mid to long-term plan. So with the near-term plan, this is everything that we would like to and feasibly could implement by 2024. It is budget neutral, which simply means that we either currently have the resources to implement it, or we feasibly are able to obtain those resources. And then the mid to long-term plan is everything that we would implement after 2024. This would require additional funding and additional resources. Resources not only referring to money, but also refers to equipment. It also refers to staff, people to actually operate the service. You know, anything where we actually need something more, significantly more than what we currently have, that is not budget neutral. And so that goes into the mid to long-term plan. Here's our, this is a chart that shows the level of service comparison system-wide. So what this chart essentially is communicating is these are the number of people in these different categories who are currently served within a quarter mile of our system today. So keep in mind that a quarter mile, for the average healthy adult, that is about a 5-minute walk. So how many people in the county live within a 5-minute walk, roughly, of our system? Right now, that total number is 632,000. Under the near-term plan, if it were implemented, that number would go up to 662,000. With the long-term plan, that number goes up to 677,000. For the minority or non-white population, that number is 338,000 people today. It goes up to 351,000 for the near term, 357,000 under the long term. Currently today, there are 40,500 low-income households that are served within a quarter mile of our system. That number goes up to 41,900 with the near-term plan and 42,400 under the long-term plan. This is a similar comparison, except instead of talking about people, we are talking about the number of routes. So currently, you can see how many routes we have right now that offer 15-minute or better frequency, how many routes offer 20-minute or better frequency. Both of those figures increase under both the near-term and long-term plans. Same thing with the number of routes that offer all-day service. Now, there is a decrease in the number of routes that offer early morning and late night service, but it's important to remember that the vast majority of that decrease is accounted for because of streamlining. So essentially, it's not that we're necessarily taking away or decreasing service to a particular location, but rather we're reducing the number of routes that serve it so that we are more efficient with our resources. We are streamlining. So keep that in mind. And then same thing with, or not same thing, but with Saturday and Sunday service, we're increasing the number of routes, as you can see here. So at this point, we will, at this point in the presentation, we will go into further detail with each of the three sub-area plans that I discussed: Reston Herndon, Centerville Chantilly Vienna Tysons, or CCVT, and Franconia Springfield. And we will have three presenters presenting on each of those three sub-area plans. So the first presenter will be Ed Reed, who will take over the mic now to discuss Reston Herndon.
Thank you, Kyle. We'll talk about the Reston Herndon area plan just at the moment. And this is the area, the northwest of the county, sort of to northwest of our service area. Next slide, please. So you can see this is the basic area that we're talking about in the Reston Herndon service plan. It sort of goes up from Route 7 in the north to, well, almost to Route 50 in the south, but not quite. And this is the way the route network will look like in the long-term plan, as you can see from the title, but we're going to implement some of these services in the short to medium term. We'll talk about those in the next slides. Slide, please. This is the main area of Reston and Herndon, Herndon to the west, Reston to the east. At the moment, a lot of the routes feed into Wheelie, Reston East Metro Station, because it was set up at a time when we thought that most of the transit demand was people wanted to get the Metro going to DC and Arlington for jobs there. But then we did a survey about 2 years ago as part of this plan, and we found out that the majority of riders stay within the Reston and Herndon area, and only a significant minority, but a minority are transferring to the Metro. In addition, you can see the Metro line is going to be extended. We're having 3 new stations within the county, and then obviously it's going to go further west to Dulles Airport and Loudoun County. So we thought we'd take advantage of the new Metro stations and reorganize the network, because we really need to reorganize the Metro network to serve the new Metro stations. So things are not going to go into Wheelie as they have been doing. We're still going to have a significant amount of service there, but we're also going to be serving the new station at Reston Town Center, Herndon, and Innovation Center. And a lot of the routes are going to feed into those stations now. A main significant improvement that we're going to have is a lot of the areas that have rush hour service only, they're only run at peak times, they're going to have all-day service. And this is particularly true in the north and the south of the area. So we'll discuss a little bit of the north and the south area on the next slide. One of the things that was requested by many of our passengers was access to Northern Virginia Community College Loudoun campus, which is just to the north and the west of Herndon. It's actually the nearest community college to that area. So we've extended Route 924 to serve that area. At the moment, Route 924 just runs at rush hours, but it's going to be running 7 days a week under the new plan, every 20 minutes at peak times, and then it's going to be running into the mid-evening and then 7 days a week as well. So a significant improvement to most of those areas that are being served. And we're also going to be serving Sterling. You can see to the left, new Route 954. That was another request from passengers, because obviously passenger demand doesn't necessarily stop at county lines. So that area is going to be served as well as Northern Virginia Community College. And at both of those locations, you can see the black lines, those connections to Loudoun County transit routes. Next slide, please. Another area we had a lot of requests for was better service, better north-south links, because again, a lot of the route network within the county, or certainly the western part of the county, is oriented east-west based on the thought that people wanted to go to DC. But there was a lot of requests for north-south service, so we introduced some new routes or revised routes in this area. One of the revised routes is the 605, which currently runs from Fairfax Mall to Reston. And it's going to be still connecting those points, but it's going to be much more direct. It's not going to sort of wander around the Stringfellow Road and Fair Lakes area. Instead, we have a new route, the 615, that's going to cover those areas. And again, they're going to have direct connections, time transfer connections between the 615 and the 605. And the 605 will have better frequency, particularly at weekends and at off-peak times, actually at rush hours as well. So it's going to have better frequency, pretty much a whole hours of operation, and offer a much more direct service for a faster journey for anybody traveling to the Fairfax area from Reston or vice versa. Another new route we have is the 901. You can see the sort of amber line to the west, which says 901. That's a new route from Herndon to Chantilly and Centerville. And that's, again, a new north-south connection, and it's going to run every half hour at peak times and every hour at other times. And that's 7 days a week into the early evening again. You can also see the purple route 990. That's not being implemented imminently. That's going to be a longer term route, but we'd like your comments on route 990. That would operate again from the Herndon area, Reston, Herndon, down to Fair Oaks via the Parkway, so express service, and then it's going to continue on the Parkway to the Springfield Franconian Metro Station. Again, that's a long-term route, but we'd like your comments on that. Thank you. And I'd like to hand over to my colleague, Hei-Jun Kong now, who's going to talk about the Centerville. Oh, sorry, before I do that, let's just look at the level of service comparison. Within a quarter of a mile of the system, the current number of people within the Reston Herndon area is 176,000, and that's going to go up near-term plan, the imminently implemented plan, 191,000, and longer-term 215,000. The minority population increasing from 92,000 to 99,000, and then eventually to 109,000 with the long-term plan. And finally, low-income households, just under 11,000 today, just under 12,000 in the near-term plan, and just under 13,000 in the long-term plan. Next slide. And finally, we're just looking at the number of routes. Now, again, I have to say, as Kyle did, that we're reducing the number of routes, so there's going to be fewer routes, but they're going to be operating more frequently and much more span of service. So all-day routes as opposed to peak hour routes at the moment. 15-minute better, 20-minute better, the number goes down, but in the long-term plan, the 20-minute or better frequency goes up. The significant improvement is the all-day service, 17 to 18, and then to 22 with the long-term plan. And also Saturday service and Sunday service, 15 to 18 for Saturdays, 20 long-term plan, 15 to 18 Sundays, and that'll be imminently, and 18 again with the long-term plan. And again, there's fewer routes early morning and late evening, but that's mostly due to consolidation where we've eliminated, we've reduced the number of routes. So we're not having as many routes out there, but we're having most of the same areas that have early morning and late evening service at the present will continue to have early morning and late evening service under the near-term and the long-term plan. So at this point, I will actually transfer to my colleague, Hei-Jun Kong, who will talk about the Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna, and Tysons area plan.
Thank you, Ed. My name is Hei-Jun. I'll go over with you some highlights of the proposed plans for the CCVT. Next slide, please. So here is a map covering the Centerville, Chantilly, Vienna, Tysons, and the neighboring areas, including Falls Church, Annandale, and McLean. To better line up with people's travel patterns for this area, basically the new plan for this region will consist of the regional trunk lines and the local lines. Trunk lines will use the express lanes like on I-66 and 495, serve those park rail facilities, and make regional connections to like Vienna, Tysons, Franconian Springfield, Pentagon, and Washington, D.C. The local routes will, however, stay local, operating all day service long and serving the neighborhoods and business, schools, hospitals, etc., and also provide transfers to the regional trunk lines. Next slide, please. The two new regional trunk lines we proposed for this region, one is Route 660, will operate along the I-66 corridor using the express lane that will connect the Centerville Parkway lot from the west to the Monument Drive garage and then all the way to the Vienna Metro and Tessons area. The other one, which is 670, that will operate along the Route 50, I-66, and 495. It will also serve the new Monument Parkway lot and go to Vienna Metro, but all the way to the south, Frank County Springfield Metro stations. So both routes will be like bidirectional, and their truncated version will also be served during midday and weekend. For the local routes, this area will have a couple of improvements. One new route, which is 610, that will operate along the Route 29, connect the Centerville, Fairfax, and George Mason University. It will provide all-day service on 6 days of a week. Another route, which is the south of this area, it's 681. It will connect Manassas City, Centerville to the new Monument Drive garage. And we're working with Prince William County on this route in particular. And the other changes for this area, which is the Route 651, and that operates along the Route 50 corridor. This new route will replace the 3 current routes, 650, which is midday service, and 651 and 652 are like rush hour service. So the new 651 will operate 7 days of service, all-day service, with 30 minutes during the rush hour and 60 minutes during the midday and weekends. Along with the Route 670, actually the Route 50 corridor will have like about 15 to 20 minutes all-day service. So moving on to the west, the eastern part of Vienna, Tessons area. Next slide, please. So in the Vienna Tessons, there are a couple of improvements. One, the new route, which is on the north side and shown as a darker green color, 468. That route will connect Vienna Metro to the western area. Another route will be 798 express route that will connect the Tessons Corner to Bethesda using the newly planned express route extension over the American Legion Bridge. And the other improvement in this area, as you can see on the map, which is shown as a gray colored area, we call it a macro transit service area. Currently, this area is largely covered by 2 routes, like 432 and 724, which we have very low usage today. So we are considering to provide new flex service in this area to better connect people to the metro rail stations and the nearby activity centers. The next slide, please. Here's the table like showing some high-level benefits of the new plan. Compared to the service we have today, the new plan will be able to serve more population. For instance, the total population living within a quarter mile of the system will increase from 353,000 today to 377,000 in the near term and 407,000 in the long term. Meanwhile, the minority and low-income households will also be increasing like significantly with the proposed improvements. This is very important because we want to make sure the service we provide will be in an equitable manner to those disadvantaged groups. Next slide, please. Based on what we heard from the previous outreach, like Cal mentioned, people want better frequency, more all-day service, and more Saturday and Sunday service. So this table shows some improvement with for the proposed plan. So for the routes with 15 minutes or better frequency, the number of routes will increase from 6 to 9. in the future. And also 20 minutes or better frequency routes will increase from 10 today to 18 in the future. We also see other improvements, like all day service routes will be doubled from today to with the near-term or long-term improvements. And the late night, Saturday and Sunday service routes will also increase significantly. The only exception is the early morning service, and the number of routes will decrease. This is mainly due to the route consolidation, like the Route 651 example I just gave you. And this doesn't mean like the level of service people receive will decrease. So overall, this new plan for the CCVT will be able to serve more people, connect them to more locations, and with better level of service. So with all these improvements I just went through, we want to hear from you what improvements you would like to see happening first so that we can prioritize. With that, I will hand this over to my colleague, Mr. Stuart Boggs, talking about the southern portion of the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Hadrian. Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm going to be speaking about the southern portion of the county, specifically Franconia, Springfield, and Huntington. Next slide, please. The proposed Franconia Springfield service plan will restructure bus routes in Franconia, Springfield, and Lorton. It encompasses 23 routes providing enhanced local, cross-county, and regional connections. It will provide enhanced access to major local employers, including Fort Belvoir and the Transportation Security Administration, as well as regional employment destinations in Fair Oaks, Tysons, Arlington, and Washington, D.C. Next slide, please. The plan features new cross-county connections such as Route 313 that will provide connections to George Mason University, Fairfax City, including the County Judicial Center, and Fair Oaks. Also, Route 400X, a limited stop service providing connections from Franconia Springfield Metro to Merrifield, Dunloring, and Tysons. This route is will run during rush hour Monday through Friday along the same core alignment as the 401 and 402, and at shared stops, riders will experience a 10-minute service frequency. Next slide, please. The Huntington-Richmond Highway feeder bus plan is being developed to support the county's first bus rapid transit route on Richmond Highway. It includes 11 routes providing access to the Richmond Highway corridor from Fort Hunt, Groveton, Gum Springs, Hybla Valley, Mount Vernon, and Woodlawn, and provide service to major employment centers along Richmond Highway, including Fort Belvoir and Mount Vernon Hospital, and will improve transit travel times and access to transit for neighborhoods bordering the Richmond Highway corridor. Next slide, please. The level of service comparison shows that the total population that will be within a quarter mile of the transit system will increase from the current 325,000 to 363,000 in the near term and 384,000 in the long term. The minority population will also benefit, with the current population of 183,000 growing to 203,000 in the near-term plan and 212,000 in the long-term plan. And low-income households accessible to the system will grow from 22,600 to 25,000 in the near term and 25,900 in the long term. Next slide, please. Residents will also see an improvement in frequency. Today, we have 15-minute or better frequency of 4 routes in this area. In the near term, that will grow to 8 routes, and in the long-term plan to 10 routes. 20 minutes or better frequency will grow from current 9 routes to 17 routes in the near term and 21 routes in the long term. All-day service in the near term will remain the same number of routes as today, but will grow to 26 routes in the long-term plan. Early morning service and late night service, the number of routes will decrease, but this does not represent a decrease in service. This reflects a consolidation of routes. People will still be able to access early morning and late night service in this area. Saturday service and Sunday service will see a growth in the number of routes from currently 15 routes operating on Saturday will grow to 17 routes in the near term and 22 routes in the long term. And Sunday service will grow from current 14 routes to 15 routes in the near term and 21 routes in the long term. And as my colleagues have already said, what we're asking you, the attendees, to provide us with is what your priorities are based on what you've heard today and what you've seen online. Which parts of these proposed plans would you like to see happen early and as opposed to later? So with that, I will turn it back over to Kyle.
Thank you, Stuart. So here we'll discuss next steps. The first step, of course, is essentially what we're in the process of doing now, which is conducting public outreach. The next step after this will be to prepare the financial and implementation plans that will feed into the TSP. After that, we will seek board approval, and by board, I mean the County Board of Supervisors. We will seek approval on the TSP that has been put together. And once we obtain board approval, then we will move forward with actually implementing the service and also continuing to monitor for opportunities to fund the long-term service plan. As you recall, the long-term component of the TSP is that which we have not secured funding for as of today. So we would like for you to fill out the TSP survey. With this survey, we will be asking you about what types of service improvements are most important to you. This will help us, again, determine what we should prioritize based on what you all prioritize. And then we also would like demographic information, which simply is who is it that Fairfax Connector serves and who did we reach with the survey. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Robin.
Thank you, Kyle. And now we're going to move in and we're going to get a chance to hear from you all and hear what your questions are and comments. And so what we're going to do is invite you to ask your questions aloud, and the chat feature has been disabled, so we're not taking any written questions, but I wanted to give you instructions on how to ask questions. First, you'll raise your hand, and the hand is located at the top of your screen next to the 3 dots you see. And then when I see your hand raised, I'll enable your microphone and call on you to ask your question. And when I call on you, if you could unmute yourself when your name is called, ask your question or provide your comment. And then if you're calling in tonight, if you're on the phone, if you would press *5, that will raise your hand. And then when you're called upon by your phone number, then press *6 to unmute. And then after you're finished, if you could press *6 to mute yourself again. So with that, we'll take some questions. Okay, I'm going to call on Emmerich, and if you could unmute yourself, Emmerich.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so thank you so much for the informative presentation. So as a regular commuter of Fairfax Connector, I'm really appreciative of these efforts. So kudos for that. So I have a quick question. There are currently many bus routes for Western Herndon area that go through the really Western East Metro Station. And I was wondering whether this will be balanced out after the new metro stations that are part of the Silver Line extension come into service. And also, I was wondering if you knew, if you know when the new metro stations will come into service, the official date. Thank you.
Okay, this is Mike Fletcher again, Chief of Planning of Transit Services Division. I will see if I can address those questions pretty quickly. We don't have an explicit date yet. When we find out, we'll definitely tell everybody else. We are anticipating it sometime this year, hopefully before fall. The plan that Ed Reed introduced to everyone a little bit earlier actually showed a rebalancing of the routes so that we're not driving all the way across the Reston Herndon area to get you to the Wheelie Metro Rail Station. We're going to get you to the nearest Metro Rail Station, whether that is Innovation or Herndon or the Reston Metro Center. So that way we can quicken up the travel time. Ed, do you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the routes serve more than one metro station, so there'll be a choice of metro stations for many of the routes. Not all the routes, obviously, but some of the routes that travel east to west, you could go to 2 or even 3 metro stations. So that'll be a significant improvement for opportunities for people to travel between different places within the area, and also to connect with the metro. If you want to go west, you could probably go west. I mean, we're still going to have a few routes in Wheelie that obviously are the nearest ones to Wheelie for the most part, but the routes that are further away, they'll just, like Michael said, are going to go to the nearest metro station.
Yeah, we'll still have 10 routes that serve the Wheelie Reston East Station, so we'll still be able to get you there. So maybe the next question.
Great, thanks, Mike. Okay, Eddie, hey, how you doing? If you want to unmute yourself and ask your question. All right, let me just. Okay, Eddie, try again.
Hello.
Hey there, we can hear you now. Eddie, you can ask your question. If you. Try to unmute yourself again, Eddie.
Hello.
There you go. Hey there. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. I have 2 questions to I have 2 questions to have to ask. I have 2 questions. The first one is about once the Fairfax connector change. Does it have to do imputation? When will the Silver Line will open phase 2? Because I talked to one of the Missouri district and our staff and told me that we have to wait for the Silver Line phase 2 to be open because it's been almost 5 years since they say it's going to open in 2018, and now once of a delay or this is a ton of frustration, a 5 year gap waiting for that. I mean that once it's open, it means we can make Fairfax connector change, a bus change. And my second question: after all the buses you guys promote, would you like? How can we make it some adjustment or make an adjustment or recommendation on the buses to make it easier for point A to point B, to improve our bus service to make it easier? Because at one time I tell you something, that I've driven driving the bus and it takes so long to get to point A to point B, it makes it harder. And once the bus's implementation change, it'll make it more easier and make an improvement.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Tom, did you want to take that first part of the question and I can take the second part?
Sure. This is Tom Bashani. I'm the director of Fairfax County's Department of Transportation. So we do anticipate the Silver Line will be ready to open this summer. I don't have any specific date for you yet, but we do anticipate that it will be opening this summer. There are right now, they are conducting operational readiness testing that should be finished shortly. And then once that is completed, then they will begin pre-revenue testing. That would allow them to finish, unless they find some significant problem, that they should be able to open the Silverline Phase 2 this summer.
Thank you, Tom. I'll answer the second question, which would revolve around how can we make routes a little bit more efficient and effective so it doesn't take so long to get from point A to point B across the county. And as each one of the team members were talking about, that's exactly what our plan is trying to do, is by making routes a little bit straighter, putting in some regional routes, and maybe we can make the travel time shorter for people to be able to get from one end of the county to another end, or even just across your own neighborhood. So that's what we're focused on, and we need you to go through on the online survey and go through every route that's important to you. And if you go online, you go to your route and you pull down a little pull down menu, and it will ask you the types of improvements. And if you log that in, we'll be able to see that and make a different modifications. The other thing that we're doing to try to improve the travel time for everyone who rides the bus is making sure that the buses arrive at key locations like Metro rail stations and the new Monument Park and Ride Lot facility with very small transfer times, so people don't have to wait 20-30 minutes for the next bus to continue their journey. So we're very conscious of that, and we're trying to make sure that the routes that we develop are able to get people through the transportation system to the key locations where they want to go with as little time as possible. Now, we're not going to be able to do that for everything, but that is a goal that we've been trying to achieve. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Michael. And I'm going to go to the phones now, and the phone number is 472-2017, and you can unmute yourself by pressing *6 on your phone. So that, I think we might have lost our phone caller. Let's see. Okay, so let's see, try again for phone number 472-2017. If you could press *6, that should unmute your microphone. And unfortunately, I can't unmute your microphone for you, or I would. Let's see. *6 should unmute. I'll tell you, why don't you just keep trying, and if you get unmuted, we will take your question. And
well, Robin, why don't I, while we wait for the individual to unmute, I will add a couple of extra bits of information, hopefully. One of the key things, and the team members said it throughout the evening so far, is we want to prioritize. And the reason why we need to prioritize is there's only so much resources that we have presently, and we're trying to identify what we need to improve first, so we can get the greatest benefit for the least amount of resources. One of the things that we need to stress is that everything that we mentioned in the short-term plan over the next year or so, most of that resources have been identified so far. So most of those improvements we are going to be able to improve. It's the mid to long-term service improvements that there is where we need to identify additional resources. So we need your input so that we can prioritize that list to make sure that when we identify new resources, we can make sure that we make the next major improvement. I think the individual now has the ability to, they took their hand down. They took their hand down, actually.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? We're here for you. And we have a question.
Hi, I have a question about the Huntington Mount Vernon routes.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my concern is about the 101 bus. It used to provide direct service from Huntington to the Mount Vernon Estate and Gardens, which is a major employer and a major tourist destination. So I'm concerned that it's no longer a direct route for those two populations.
And that's one of the things that we're looking at. And you are correct in the plan, the way it is described right now, that might go away. And that's why we want to hear from you today. In fact, I was just talking with our team and my boss earlier this week that we may need to revisit some of these route structures after we get your input. A lot of these improvements, especially within the Richmond corridor, will not happen until the BRT on Richmond Highway is implemented, which is probably going to be about 8 years from now. So we're going to have some more time to refine our feeder bus plan. And one of the things we want to do is make sure that we're not causing people to transfer too many times. So that's one of the things that I'm working with our team right now to maybe make some tweaks and some adjustments to that plan. But our team is writing down all the comments today, and we've heard this comment already, most very recently, and we want to make sure we address that comment. If you can get online and also document it there, that will help us make sure we address those comments and make sure that we're not impacting people's travel and causing undue transfers. Hopefully
Oh, that's
that
great.
helps.
Thank you. And I know that sometimes it will be inevitable to have transfers, and you would want to make sure that it's safe for people to cross the street or whatever it is that they might need to do in order to make a transfer.
Yeah, and in the transit industry.
Right now,
ahead.
you would have to transfer from the 104 to the 101 and cross Collingwood Road, which doesn't have crosswalks at this moment in time.
Definitely. One of the things in the transit industry that we know is that the more you force transfers, the longer the trip takes, and the more people would not want to take that trip. It's sort of a trip failure kind of thing. It's a barrier, and we don't want to create barriers. We want to eliminate barriers so people have the opportunity to use transit. But thank you for that. It is a concern of ours, and we're going to be looking into that.
Thank you very much.
So much.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Eldridge. If you could unmute yourself.
Yeah, okay. My question is with the 951 bus. I actually work at USGS, so a lot of people don't even know about the upcoming changes to the 951. In particular, the fact that according to the changes you're going to have, I guess, starting with the July, you're eliminating the midday runs.
Hey, Ed, maybe you can address that question, because that was your area that you had there.
Sure. Well, the 951 is going to have an improved service every 20 minutes, which is either similar or better to the existing routes. Admittedly, there's some areas that are not going to have midday service that have midday service presently, but those two routes, well, that one route in particular, the 559, has very low ridership. But we've also, we have the longer term plan. On the longer term plan, the midday service will have Saturday service on the 951. So you'll have, again, for people that are on the line of the 951, there may be better service, once the longer term plan, because once the resources are identified, we could prioritize that. We'd like to actually see, what the patterns are going to be in the future. But like I said, some of the services that were not, the routes that were not operating anymore in the future, they have very low ridership. So we really need to, again, we need to, operate the routes within the resources that are available. And, we've sort of looked at the ridership and looked at the pattern of use of the existing route as part of our analysis. And, like I said, some routes are not, not going to be operated anymore, due to low ridership, basically.
So
You're
let
saying
me
that this
add on
first
to,
that is you're saying low ridership, but part of that, I'm one of the people that works at USGS. So being government employees, we're just going back to work next week. So a lot of people don't even know about that.
that's very important to us. And thank you, Raymond, for telling us this. We have yet to get out and start advertising this new service. Maybe Robin can touch on that in a moment. But one of the things that we're looking at today is the future of 951 will add off-peak service and all-day service and Saturday service. The question is, when can we implement that? We had to make some hard choices when we put the plan together for the Reston Herndon area, that we couldn't do everything to everything everywhere. So we're trying to make a right balance of our resources. So we're going to take that comment and we're going to take a look at what we can do. And once the system goes into effect, we will then make modifications to the Reston Herndon plan, which will be implemented when the Silver Line comes online. So just because there's a line on the map doesn't mean it's not going to change once we understand some of the travel patterns. But Robin, maybe you can touch a little bit about some of the public communication that we're going to be doing as the Silver Line approaches.
Sure, and thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Eldridge. We do have a plan here shortly. We're about to launch several community meetings, as well as pop-ups around Herndon and Reston, some at community centers and other traveled areas. And we're going to be doing a campaign on, television, radio, streaming services to kind of lead people to information that will tell them about their routes and so they can know. So we do understand that that's very important, and we are planning to do a great deal of outreach here shortly. We're about to kick that off. So thank you very much. Okay, and I think Emmerich, you're up again. Let's see, hang on here. There, I think you can unmute now.
Thank you. Yes, I have a second question. Are there any plans to upgrade the bus fleet? Because I noticed that, for example, many buses have, there are different configuration. Some buses have many seats, side-facing seats, and some only have forward-facing seats. So I was wondering if you have any plans on that. Thank you.
Well, I can try to address that, and then maybe Tom Bashadny, our director, can maybe provide more additional information. We actually have a capital plan that actually purchases and replaces buses on a preset schedule based on the life expectancy of that vehicle. So we're always in the process of updating our fleet and making sure that we have a very young fleet, or not really a medium fleet, because as buses get older, they actually cost more to operate. So maybe Tom, you have more to add?
So we do have a bus replacement program for the Fairfax connector, and we have it scheduled that buses are replaced about, each bus is replaced after it gets to be about 15 years old. So we do have an order on tap right now for some buses. And each year we replace about that many, 30 to 40 buses. We have a whole, we're also moving into electric buses. So our first 8 electric buses will be arriving later this year, but we do continue to upgrade the fleet on a regular basis so that we do have buses that are in good condition to be able to operate the service. If you have some specific recommendations related to the seat configurations, feel free to send those in to us, and we can certainly look at them as we're preparing for the next bus orders.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any additional questions yet, but don't miss your opportunity to ask the transit team. Here they go. Let's see, Eddie. Let's see, I'm gonna hang on here. Nope. Okay, I think. Okay, 472. If you want to ask your question again. And unmute yourself. Or maybe you put your hand down. Okay, Eddie. Can you unmute yourself?
Yes. It's about my other questions because I asked one more question. I'm someone sitting with next to me wants to ask a quick question. It's my son Collins told me to ask one first because I'm sitting here along this person. I want to ask this question and she wants to say about the question that we want to ask.
Okay.
On the Chantilly Centerville route, on the adjustment, I look at the route 630 and that it goes all the way midnight. And the other one is that it needs the route 651, which is good, goes to 11. It needs to be the same thing like 630 up to midnight. That's midnight and the other routes are the changes like the Chantilly Central route goes back then used to go Chantilly Central to Vienna. But once it's changed, it'll be a massive confusion because you guys proposed the 670, 671 route, make it an express bus, express compared to local routes. And the other reason, and one last thing is that there gonna be a ton of confusion once the bus change. And what would you address it? That's my someone I asked one question. Someone asked for someone my sitting next to me when to ask that question.
Okay, well, that's a good question, Eddie. And it's always about communication with the public. This is part of that process first to get people to understand that we're doing these plans to try to improve the route structures. When you put anything new out, it's always about how do we tell the people? And Robin and her team work very hard to try to educate and inform the public about what's coming, what's new, and how do you use it. And so before we make any changes to anything, we're going to get out there to the public and try to communicate to everyone about what's the difference between these two routes. The Route 651 is operated all day long, 7 days a week. And then the other route, Route 670, is a limited stop service route. It's what we're calling a cross-county connector route. It's so there was a question that somebody had a little earlier about being able to travel quickly, get from point to point very quickly. And so that is allowing people to get from across the county very quickly. But the other route, 651, will allow you to get from neighborhood to neighborhood. So you have a shorter trip, you can take this 651. You have a longer trip, take 670. And so that's the way we're trying to design the system so you can choose the route you want to go based on the length of travel you have to go, instead of every route trying to do everything. Many of the routes that we have out in Chantilly, Centerville are trying to not only be local circulators, but they're also trying to be express buses out to Vienna, and it's just a long trip. So that's what we're trying to do. But maybe, Robin, you can address the question about how we communicate better with the public.
Well, one thing we try to do is work with our community organizations in every community who, have meetings with different nonprofit organizations with, this is like mouth to mouth. That's very important to get the word out to people. So we work with people who work with groups. So that's one way we go out. We are going to be having pop-ups at different locations, which will be publicizing places at like metro stations, in the communities, at community centers, at senior centers, throughout the next 2 months to talk about, particularly for the Herndon, Reston, Chantilly area, because of the start of the Silver Line. But we do that with every one of these bus service review plans. So we know how important it is to get the information to you. Another way we do that is through we're going to be having a campaign with video and radio advertising on TV stations, radio stations, streaming. So that's kind of a way you might hear about it, but we want to actually tell you about it when we can. And you're always welcome to contact us at any of the ways you see on the screen right now. So, and even a phone call, if you have a question about your route or you have an improvement that you want to tell us about or suggested improvement, we just really appreciate hearing from you as well.
Well, let me add in, if I could, Robin, the survey that we want you to go on and take. You can choose any route you want to comment on. There'll be a little pull down box. You can enter a response there. And then there's a little box underneath that. And then you can type in whatever you want in addition, whether it's that route or another route. We've already received over 800 individuals have gotten on the survey and given us already their comments and already their general comments, particular comments to particular questions, so particular routes. So we're already starting to look at those answers and those responses already. So I think we have another question.
Mr. Parnes, if you'd like to unmute yourself, your microphone, and ask your question. Mr. Parnes, let's see if you can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Nope.
Okay.
So let me ask, and let me just throw this out there to everyone, just so make sure that everyone understands. The routes in and around Reston Herndon, those will come online. What we call the short-term plan will come online when the Silver Line Phase 2 is implemented. Everything else that we're presenting today and that you'll see on our website is not being implemented right away. The routes in and about Chantilly, Centerville, Vienna to Tysons will be implemented in cooperation with the express lanes that will be opened up later this year and the monument facility later the year after. So we will implement those services in connection with those improvements to the infrastructure, and the rest of the county, and along with the long-term items, will be implemented as resources are identified and as we were talking about earlier. Jeff Barnes is here. Okay, Jeff, what
I am
do you have?
unmuted. Thank you so much. I have looked at the routes on Weston Fairfax, basically the Herndon Reston routes. The three of them basically servicing my community nearby them, which is the 900 series. I noticed that the service to the Dulles Airport, which goes up to the Air and Space Museum, is very close to the service that goes down Centerville Road, but they're not connected. And there are east-west routes that go close to it. Are you going to publicize that people can walk a block and transfer to a bus that will take them to Dulles Airport in a more direct route that they might be able to take otherwise? It seems to me that going from, for example, the 954, I think it is, and the 901 to the 981, I'm not certain of the numbers now because I have them off my page, would make it a very easy route to get to and from the airport. But since the bus stops are not shown, it's not certain that people would be actually able to get the bus, even though they could see the bus go north and south on a route that they might be standing at, and the bus might not stop. So is there any way to find out the actual planned stops? Because that makes quite a bit of difference into whether you can see the bus or you can take the bus. Thank you.
Well, excellent question. the easiest way for me to explain that one before I hand it off to Ed Reed, who's not only our expert in route structure and bus stops, because he holds the key to all the bus stops in the county for our Fairfax County system, is that when you see a regular route, typically our bus stops are spaced between, depending upon the density of the population, how many households live in that area, between 750 feet to 1,200 feet. So if you see a line that's not on a freeway or an expressway, it's typically there is a bus stop every 700 to 1,200 feet. And we've designed the system, whether it is the 954 that goes north to Sterling or the 983 or the 901, we've all designed those routes to be able to link together at key locations, whether it's Innovation or the Herndon, the new Herndon Metro Rail, where we actually try to get time transfers. So if the people are unsure whether they can get off and get another bus out on the street, they can take it to the nearest terminal and then transfer there. So
Understand.
Okay,
That's very good. But for example, the people who live in Franklin Farm, who might wish to actually go west, where they can catch the 981 it is, that will go up to the Dulles Airport, might not want to go all the way up to a point further east to go west, if that makes sense. And along Wall Road, it's probably the shortest distance between the Air and Space Museum Parkway and Centerville Road. And so that passage, pedestrian passage, could be suggested as a way to get both on each terminus. There's a way to get a bus to go to Dulles Airport. The same thing with 901 that goes up and south. If you change at that point, you can take a bus to Dulles Airport without going all the way up. And then it's just, I sometimes think that people don't believe that people are willing to walk a short distance between bus routes to enable transfers. And I think we need to stress that, hey, if you're willing to walk that distance, you might save yourself some time. Again, that's just a thought of mine.
Okay, well, thank you.
Another point was, I did see where a bus stop in front of Highland Mews, which is at Highland Mews and Centerville Road, the note says only used during AM or PM rush hour, and it needs to be all used all the time. If it serves a neighborhood in the AM rush, it serves them in the PM rush, and you should not, since you have a bus that's running from early morning to late at evening, not have a bus stop that's enables people to get on and off. Another thought. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take these notations down. We will take a look at these this is a 10-year plan, and we'll see how we can address those concerns. It's always and one of the key things that we will be looking at once the plan is implemented, when the Silver Line comes online, is travel patterns. What is changing, what comments that we're hearing from people. As we started the process years ago, one of our first meetings, an individual asked me, well, what happens if it doesn't match the way people travel? And my answer is, we will adjust the system to match the travel pattern. So that's what we'll be looking at.
I hope that works. I know that our community will be losing half the bus service it had back since the days of Metro bus service. But I hope the new service going down Silver Road, and the fact that it will run on weekends and during the course of midday, will be a benefit to us over the fact that we're losing some of the internal bus system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It looks like we don't have any more questions at the moment. Oh, yes, we do. Yay. Okay. Let's see. All right, phone number 472-2017. Please, you can unmute yourself and ask your question. There you go.
Hi, I was just calling to let you know that I was trying to take the survey on my iPad while I'm listening to the rest of the presentation, and it's not live yet on an iPad. I can call up the maps, but not the survey.
Okay.
Okay, we will have to check on that. In fact, our consultant is online right now listening in. So they're the ones that put the thing together, and we will double check on that right away.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for telling us. We want to make sure that we are getting everybody's, no matter what device you're on.
And we can wait another minute. Is there anything else you all would like to add to wrap up, or we can wait another couple of minutes if anybody else has a question? Another question? Oh. Okay. I think, Robert, if you could unmute your microphone.
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. I got a question mainly about Route 681. I know it's long term, but could there be any route changes in the near future? Or
Okay, so you're talking about the route that we introduced, Heijun Kong, and talked about going between Centerville and Manassas.
yes.
So what we do is we're going to take your comment down. We're going to hopefully you can get online and make that comment to us. And we will take a look at our resources, and hopefully we can see if that's something that we can do. Once again, as I stated earlier, it's all about the balance of resources. I would love to put everything that's in the plan out there, but unfortunately we have to make choices. We're also talking with PRTC OmniRide, who operates this transit service in Manassas, and maybe there's some sharing of services that we can do. Maybe they can run the service. So that's one of the things that we are coordinating with our agency partners across county lines to make sure that we see dotted lines on the map of where the county is. People don't. They travel wherever they need to travel, regardless of where it is, whether it's in Prince William County or whether it's in Fairfax. So we are working with our partners to see other agencies to see what we can do. But thank you.
I got that.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Robert. Okay. Any other questions? Well, if while you're thinking about that last question, let me tell you one more time, we really do want to hear from you. As Michael said, we especially would love to hear from you through the survey, and we'll make sure it's working on all cylinders. So that is at fairfaxcounty.gov/connector/TSP. In addition, you'll find information about the outreach that's been done on the TSP, and you'll see you'll find the survey and also the route sheets and the maps, so you can get a closer look. Also, if you would want to submit comments, you can send those to Fairfax Connector at fairfaxcounty.gov. You can also call us at our Customer Information Center, and that's 703-339-7200 or TTY 703-339-1608. Or you could even mail your comments, and we do get mailed in comments still. So, and you can do that to Fairfax County Department of Transportation in care of Transit Planning. Public comment on the TSP will get it to us fast, and that's 4050 Legato Road, Suite 400, Fairfax, Virginia, 22033. And we surely do appreciate you joining us tonight. It sounds like thunder and lightning's on its way in my neighborhood.
I hear the same thing, even though my background looks like a sunny day. No, it's raining out there. But I also wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy days, spending time with us, giving us this valuable information. We like to say that these plans are built for you, by you. Even though Ford Motor Company is also now using the same tagline, I noticed the other day on a commercial, but I don't know if we got it first or not. But it's important for us to hear your comments, because then what my team does is we sit down, we read every single one of those, and the first thing we do is we say to ourselves, can we achieve that? Can we do that? And how can we get it done? Because if the system is built without your input, you're not going to use it. And that's just the way I think. Tom?
Just echo what Robin and Michael have said. Thank you very much for your time, for your feedback. Please go online and complete the survey. Please encourage your family members, friends, neighbors, relatives to complete the survey. The more input that we get, the better off we can plan the bus service. So we really do appreciate your feedback today, and any ability you have to do the survey, we appreciate that as well. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Robin, it looks like there's another question. Someone else has got their hand up.
We'll let Emmerich close us out. One last question to close out the meeting, Emmerich. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you for this. Yeah. Last question. I was wondering if there will be a hike in bus fare, because I know that this is sometimes happening with Metrobus, but I don't know about Fairfax Container. Thank you so much. You mean a fare increase? Yes. I am unaware of that, and Tom is shaking his head, so I would agree with that. No change. Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And this meeting will be recorded and posted on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.